Stop. Stop right now. What are you doing? Why do you postpone yourself? This is the question that Seneca asks of us. I think it's a pretty easy question to answer. We do it because it's just easier to continue in the same familiar patterns that keep us trapped. The patterns that serve as a barrier between how we really want to be and our actual current mental experience. A barrier that's created in the mind. Hey friends, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, I'm Jess, and this is where we talk about things that can get us stuck in life with the goal of providing some encouragement and inspiration to become liberated. And if you want to support this work, well, I don't have to tell you, you know what to do. Today, we're going to delve into some of the reasons why we might delay our own happiness and how it can relate to addictive behaviors and how we can inspire ourselves to find a sense of well-being immediately here and now. Stick around because I'm going to share an example from my personal life that might shed some light on what we're actually talking about here. Often we think that it's only our external world that we want to be different, but in reality, I think we really know that it's our inner mental world that needs to change first in order for, anything on the outer to change. And we can learn to recognize these invisible barriers that we're erecting in our minds that are keeping us trapped and continuing to cause us to postpone our happiness. We mistakenly think that if we find the right inspirational video or the right book or the right person to motivate us, we might change. But as long as we're always looking on the outside of ourselves for the cure to our own mental malaise, we're just never going to find it. And anything on the outside can be helpful and it can serve as a pointer, but they should always point us right here inward where the real power lies. One of the biggest mistakes we make as human beings is denying our mortality and living as if we're going to live forever. And because we fool ourselves this way, procrastination can become a really big problem for a lot of us. And that's why I think that a healthy contemplation of our impending death can also be helpful to help us live more mindfully and to live more purposefully. You are living as if you are destined to live forever. Your own frailty never occurs to you. You don't even notice how much time has already passed, but squander it as though you had a full and overflowing supply. This emphasizes the impermanent nature of life, and contemplating this fact on a regular basis can actually help us stop deferring our joy and our well-being, because all of this, it could end without any notice. So why do we delay our happiness? Why do we continue to remain trapped in our addictions and in our mental traps? I would propose that it's mostly due to fear. We want to stay with what's familiar to us. If we stay in our box, surrounded by our familiar thought patterns, our familiar excuses, our familiar rationalizations, we find a weird, strange sense of stability, even though we're unhappy. We fear change, the possibility of failure. We might fear relapsing. We might fear letting people down. We might fear public opinion. We are just simply attached to these old patterns, and they offer us some comfort in their familiarity. And unfortunately, we're also averse to uncertainty and to unknowing. And this is an inner battle that most of us are frankly quite familiar with. And what we really want, which is a better life, is always going to be just outside the boundaries of our comfort zone. And with all that said, I'm not going to deny what some of you are feeling. When we are in a state of depression and hopelessness, we just can't see clearly. Our perception of everything is clouded, and it diminishes our ability to find any sense of hope or meaning in life. And I was there for years myself, so I completely understand. A state of suffering that seems to hide any potential for positive change. Maybe our continued despair is due to a fixation on the past. Maybe we think, well, once we were up here and now we're like down here due to our own bad choices and actions. We lost things that we valued. We are stuck in regret over a past that just simply can't be changed. My friends, life isn't linear. Circumstances are temporary, and they can be all over the place over the course of our lifetime with their highs and their lows, depending on whatever our mental state is. And this goes hand in hand with our various addictive behaviors and substances. These addictions can keep us occupied in them and are primarily the way that we're postponing our joy. And even when we no longer find pleasure in these behaviors and in these substances, we seem to still remain addicted to them. And in doing so, we keep avoiding the discomfort of the root issues that are keeping us stuck. We want to feel better, but our desire is misdirected. And once we see what is actually happening with ourselves, we can more easily come out of this delusion that we're in. Our redemption is not in finding ways to feel better in the moment or on the surface levels of our mental world. Our redemption is actually in confronting the thing that we have been avoiding. Mindfulness practice is about learning the art of paying attention to our thoughts, seeing how they are affecting our well-being, and noticing all the conditioned patterns of our thinking, those unskillful mindsets that we just keep returning to. It's about being sober-minded and cultivating a sound mind. I want to tell you a personal story of a very recent experience, but to lay the foundation first, I have an event coming up that I'm going to be going to. It's a little embarrassing to admit, but sometimes I feel a lot of anxiety in large social settings, especially when I'm among strangers. And I sometimes go to these events all by myself and I don't know anybody. And if I'm too much in my head about it, I get this sort of crippling anxiety, usually before I even go to the event. But the other evening, I was having a conversation with my significant other about how drinking alcohol made these sort of things easier. And that may seem true, but in the end, I think we know how it ends. It doesn't address the root cause of the condition anxiety, and it can have really terrible results in the long and the short term. Like I said, most of us know this. Well, I woke up the next morning and I found that I was stuck in my imaginary future as this little ego character that I play in my head. Does anybody else do this, or is it just me? I was imagining all of the worst scenarios, all the things that I have to do before I travel on my big, heavy loaded motorcycle to this event. I was thinking of bad weather and accidents and having to be social with strangers, you name it. And that little ego character of mine, that little self, that character me, was just getting really overwhelmed. And the more I resisted the feelings, the more overwhelmed I felt. And I felt like I was on the verge of panic. So I sat with it for a while, meaning a few hours. These things, sometimes take the time that they take to work them out. And I asked myself, well, where is the lesson in this? I had to ask, who is creating all of this anxious energy? Who is this is about to have a panic attack over something that isn't even happening? It's pretty ridiculous, right? Who is trying to control and manipulate this whole mental experience? The answer became obvious. It was the little character ego, me, that was manipulating it all, creating an illusion in my mind, a whole imaginary experience. Consciousness, in some of us, is conditioned to be very attached to our illusions. And part of that illusion is the ego identity or the self-concept. But the ego self is just a conceptual creation, a mental phenomena. It happens when us, as consciousness, identify with the thinking mind. It's a projection. Therefore, it lacks substance that the true self is made of. The conceptual self, this ego, doesn't have a sense of the root of true beingness. It's incapable of controlling its experience, no matter how hard it tries to grasp and manipulate everything as it tries to feel better in the moment. It's shallow and it's empty because it's merely a thought-based orientation of self, trying to operate in the world of imagination, all of which lack all substance of reality. So the lesson for me was to say, I don't know. I don't know what to do with all of this. When I recognize what is happening, I can ask, who is creating this imaginary experience? And it becomes quite obvious. It's that little mental character that's a projected aspect of consciousness that's lost a sense of substance, a sense of reality. So it really can't do anything. But as in my case, it just creates more suffering for itself. So when I just said, I don't know what to do with this mental mess I created, it was then that the true aspect of consciousness was able to return to the source, to return to a sense of the root of my very emergence into this here and now, and to leave the illusion alone. It was about surrender, and it wasn't about pushing. It wasn't about resisting. When we stop trying to manipulate our mental experience, to manipulate our imaginal creations that are just creating our suffering, and we say, I just don't know, a sort of surrender happens, and then there is a release from the illusion. I hope this makes sense because words always fall short when describing these kind of experiences. And I only tell you this because all of these videos that I make are just me sharing what I'm learning as I work through all my own stuff while on the path. All I know is my own experience. If the concept of mindfulness is new, getting very present can seem very strange at first. For our whole lives, we have been ignoring the immediate now, the very point of emergence into this, the razor-sharp edge of our appearance that comes out of the substrate of all existence. This and here and now. Can you sense it? The famous Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh said, the present moment is filled with joy and happiness, and if you are attentive, you will see it. The skeptic may scoff, but if you can settle yourself down to this very instant, you will see that time disappears and that the eternal now arises. No matter what is going on in your life, this bliss of the eternal now, it's always here, this right here. The thing is that most of us are not willing or even able to settle down enough to see the most obvious of the obvious reality. The latter is a primary practice that can help us stop delaying our joy. Talking about mindfulness here. If we find ourselves stuck again, we can remember that, we are attention, that it's not something separate from us. We can begin to believe in our ability to shift focus, to develop a sense of resilience through intentional thinking. And if fear has been the driver of the postponement of your own joy, then intentionally ask the question, what is the worst thing that could happen if you stopped doing blank unskillful behavior mindset and started doing blank skillful behavior mindset? Be realistic. If you fail, you learn something. So you pick yourself up. Perfectionism comes from the thought identified ego, and it's rooted in our fear of failure. So don't worry about it. Fail forward towards success without the interference of ego. Fear is a transient state. It will pass. Epictetus gives us this advice: make the use of what is in your power and take the rest as it happens. And as we learn this, we're also learning to loosen up a little, to not be so rigid. Don't be so attached to a sense of discipline. That's just another form of perfectionism. Our culture teaches us that we always have to be prepared. We always have to be vigilant, that we always have to be ready at all times for whatever life throws at us. Because we have been trained to do this, to always be in control and prepared, we soon find that it's impossible. And then we become paralyzed in our ability to do what's best for ourselves according to the impossible notion of control and preparedness that we've been conditioned in. We just freeze. I'm not advocating carelessness. What I'm advocating is rational thinking and intentionality combined with what Lao Tzu in the Tao Te Ching teaches us: be like water. We can be adaptable and flexible, and we can conform to what is the present without losing a sense of our true nature. So centuries ago, humans were asking the same questions that are relevant today. Why do we postpone ourselves? As we've talked about today, it's because of the clouding over of our inherent wisdom by our misconceptions about reality, about our unbounded fears, about our minds inhabiting and identifying with everything except the reality of the timeless now. It's because we are attached to the ideas of conditional happiness and avoidance of our root issues and our denial of our finite nature. We're in denial that we're actually running out of time, but we can be happy for the remainder of the time we have left if we believe it. The time is now. Stop delaying it. The right time for happiness is now. Live well, my friends. I hope you found some value in today's video. If you did, please share it with somebody it might encourage. Also, please like and subscribe if you want to support this work and help these messages get more exposure to people who are on the path to liberation. I thank you so much for being here with me today, and I'm grateful for each and every one of you. I will see you all next time.